Samuel Haynes was a member of that contingent of Belizean troops that went to fight for the empire in World War I. That's very important. But secondly, it was the returning troops who held Belize City and came within a thread of actually taking control of this city during the riot of July 1919. In other words, the importance of the West Indian contribution to World War I is something we need to go back and remember and to think about. The impact of the war on these 20,000 West Indian men and their experience of the war. This is a medal that several of them were decorated with. They fought in Palestine and Jordan. They fought in France, Egypt, and Italy. They fought in what is today called Iraq, what was then called Mesopotamia. This is the breakdown of the troops. Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Bahamas. British Honduras sent 533. I don't know what percentage of the total population of Belize that was. We could find that out. But it seemed to me that it was not an insignificant contribution to the overall West Indian total. This is how the regiment was broken up into brigades. Now the Belizeans, I think, fought mainly in the Middle East, in the 1st and 2nd Brigade. This is a picture of a young man called Winston Churchill Millington. He was born in Barbados in 1893, and he went off to serve for the Crown and Empire. Now, this is the first document we have involving Samuel Haynes. This is, note where it's dated, Basra. Is Basra I'm talking about, you know? Basra in Iraq today. Basra, Mesopotamia. To whom it may concern, in appreciation of the happy relations I have had with Corporal S.A. Haynes of the British West Indies contingent in Mesopotamia, and of his valuable services rendered in connection with the religious and social work among the men of his unit, I take pleasure in making a brief record. My acquaintance with Corporal Haynes has continued over the past year and 8 months since I became attached to his section of the British West Indies as their chaplain. During that time, he has been at my right hand in my work among them, with pronounced interest in the welfare of his comrades, a cheerful willingness to render help alike in connection with religious services. Thank you. Thank you, brother, with religious services and social functions, and marked ability. Everybody is going to mention that quality of Samuel Haynes, his marked ability. He has ever been a reliable individual, and his services have been much valued. I cannot speak too highly of his loyal spirit and character as a Christian worker. Now, this is dated February the 5th, what, 1914. Okay. This is an important document, not only because it tells you about Haynes's role serving in the British West Indies Regiment in Mesopotamia. It is important not only because it attests to his genuine talent and ability, it is important because it emphasizes, on the one hand, his deep religious convictions and qualities, and we will come to see where this comes from, but it also bespeaks his loyalty to the British Crown. You see, it would take a real major breach in the trust that we West Indians had reposed in the empire to have broken this bond. The British broke the bond of trust with us. And now we will see the consequences of that breach. I think Brother Haynes, Father Haynes' spirit must have been with me. At about midnight last week, I was having serious doubts, about whether I could really deliver this lecture. Doubts and fears that I would disappoint you. And about midnight, this came up on my computer, came to me. I think it was Father Haynes sending me a little reassurance to keep going. This is an essay that Samuel Haynes published on April the 17th, 1930, in the black newspaper, the Philadelphia Tribune. It's called The Black Menace, Marcus Garvey, by S.A. Haynes. Now, let us read what our brother has to say. Garvey's father, a virile fighter. Introduction. My first contact with Garvey and Garveyism came in the autumn of 1918. I was a non-commissioned officer in the British colonial forces encamped in Egypt at the something desert town of El Kantara. The armistice had been signed and we were en route in southern Italy for demobilization. After two hectic years of military activities in the Jordan Valley and the hellhole of Mesopotamia. It's still a hellhole, eh? Nothing has changed. It was an afternoon of something. It was an afternoon of blistering heat, heightened by a blinding sandstorm, which we've heard about in those parts, a blinding sandstorm which roared across the bleak desert and sent us scampering something from something whole in our tents beneath the swaying palms. Sergeant William Lane had just answered the bugler's call for something other, and he held in his arm with papers under his arm. "Hey boys," he bellowed after shaking the dust from his immaculate uniform. "There's a man in New York, one Marcus Garvey from Jamaica. Around Garvey, make contact with these soldiers, these men of the BWIR stationed in the desert in Egypt. There had to have been an underlying network that they were using. You and I don't even begin to fathom how black people had this deep experience, this spatial experience across thousands of miles, across continents, and they were connecting the dots. They were connecting the dots. It can't be done, said one man. Let's see the paper, demanded another. Something, here, Corporal, read this to the boys and pass it on to Sergeant Lewis. The paper's Sergeant Lane handed me, the paper Sergeant Lane handed me was a copy of the Negro World, the official organ of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, then in its infancy. From El Cantara, we went on to Taranto, Italy, through the rugged and picturesque Alps to Le Havre, is it Le Havre? France, and thence home to waiting loved ones. During those 6 months, I studied profoundly the new philosophy which graced the pages of the Negro World. 2 years after demobilization, I made the personal acquaintance of Mr. Garvey in the summer of 1921, and thereafter found myself frequenting the meetings of the UNIA. At the end of 30 days, I was sporting a red, black, and green something of active membership in the association. In other words, thank you. Thank you very much. Samuel Haynes discovered quite literally the teachings of Marcus Garvey in the desert trenches of Egypt. He comes back to the Caribbean after the experience of a very critical event that took place while waiting for demobilization in Taranto, Italy. Taranto is a little town right up under the heel of the Italian peninsula. They tried in the demobilization of the West Indian troops to make them clean the latrines of the white soldiers. And when the West Indians said, but you don't have any white soldiers doing that work, they said, shut up and clean the shit. West Indians don't take that kind of stuff. See, they don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know who we are. And these West Indians were told, you are mutineers. And they brought in a brigade of machine gunners to arrest them. It was in the crisis of the Taranto mutiny that the West Indians got together and formed something called the Caribbean League.